Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Laurie, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Laurie, and I am really excited to bring you today's guest. We've been doing a lot of topics recently, and we still have some more in the queue about minimalism and what does that look like? And what is simplicity versus minimalism? And how do you differentiate them? And does minimalism mean you have one fork and two shirts, or is there another way that we can define it? And I know from my own personal experience, the older I get, the less stuff I really want, but there are different seasons of our lives where we go through scenarios. And I think we, as the organizing space and the minimalism space becomes, more popular and mainstream, there's people, experts that are out there that have different perspectives, and finding kind of that sweet spot for you is really important to hear from all these different people to find what resonates with you most in you and your family and whatever season of life you're in. And so joining me today is Krista Lockwood. And Krista is the founder of the blog and the podcast Motherhood Simplified. And she teaches decluttering primarily for moms who don't necessarily want to be a full-blown minimalist. And I'm very curious to hear her story, but in 2013, she and her husband moved from Alaska to Florida with one suitcase. Now, I don't know anything other than that was sent in her bio. So we are absolutely going to unpack that. And although she doesn't believe that you have to be like an extremist, I know that living a simplified life has been something that's been a priority for her, and has obviously since turned that into a business. And so we're going to talk about all the things of mom guilt and strategies and how you can begin the process if you want to embark on a journey for yourself and your family. So without further ado, let me welcome Krista Lockwood to the show. Welcome, Krista.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yes, I accidentally discovered the lifestyle of having less stuff when we moved from Alaska to Florida with one suitcase per person in our family. And it was crazy. It was crazy.
Okay. So talk about that. So again, well, give our listeners, and you can use this time. I obviously did a real 10,000 foot view of who you are and what you do, but maybe just paint a picture a little bit about your story. And then obviously you have to talk about the suitcase.
Yes. Yeah. So currently I have 5 kids and I run Motherhood Simplified, where, just like you said, I teach moms how to declutter their homes and really simplify their homes and their lives so that they can have more time and energy to do the things that they really want to do, right? Whether it's improve their finances, their physical and emotional health, their relationships, practice more self-care instead of just wishing they could do it. But it started by accident in 2013 when my husband and I were both born and raised in Alaska. And he woke up one day and was like, he's an entrepreneur. And he's like, what would you think if we moved to a big city? And I just was like, I dominated my business. Like that's the sentence that he said. And it's like burned in my mind, because when he said it, I was like, okay, like we're from here. Our families are here. Like nobody leaves Alaska. Like the culture is like, you ride or die in Alaska.
I mean, you're like, you're in your own island, like your own, like you're not even on the mainland. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I thought he was joking or, just saying something. And then the next week, maybe 2 weeks later, he had an interview in Florida. He flew down there and accepted it on the spot. And they told him that he would have 6 weeks to like come back to his family. We had 3 kids then.
I was going to ask you, and we have to talk about, because I didn't even mention that in the bio about your mom of 5, which is a huge deal. So what are the ages of your kids, just to kind of give us some context?
Yeah. So right now we have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and then our older kids are 10, 12, and 16.
Okay.
So at the time they were 2, 4, and 7.
Wow.
So yeah, they were like, we love you. You got the job. Go home. We'll see you in 6 weeks. But then when he got to Alaska, they were like, we changed our mind. We need you here next week. Like, if you want the job, you have to be here next week. So he went to Florida and started the job and got a house, and a car for us. And I stayed back and had to get ready to move to Florida. And we tried to configure it like all the different ways, shipping our stuff to Florida, putting it on pallets, just the bare essentials on pallets, getting a U-Haul, and me driving a U-Haul by myself with 3 kids across Canada and the literal United States. Like, just none of it added up. None of it made sense.
Were you on board with this?
I trusted him, but no, like I was.
Okay. Cause I'm like, holy moly.
Yeah. I trusted him. And I mean, I didn't have, it sounds horrible, I know, but I didn't have much of a choice because, I was like, yes, I support you in this. Go do what you have to do. And then I had to figure it out. And so did he. He also had to figure it out. He also had to be down there. He also had to leave his wife with 3 small kids. And I owned a school, a little preschool. Oh. So I was also working. Yeah, I had to leave that behind, but I was also working 10-hour days. It was just me and the 3 kids and getting rid of all of this stuff. So when we did the math on what it would cost to get our stuff there, it just didn't add up. Because it's the furthest points you can go while staying on the same continent.
I was like going to say, literally, you're in and I'm not a geography buff, but I feel like you could not have picked a further part in the United States to go to than Florida.
Yeah, it's the furthest point. And, we thought about just keeping stuff in storage until we could afford to ship it down to us. But we were like, that it just doesn't make, like, the math doesn't make sense. It's more affordable for us to just bring the essentials and start over. And so that's what we did. We rented, he actually found a house that was for rent that was furnished. So we had a little bit of a buffer with that.
I was going to say that bought you time. So you didn't have to go get a sofa and coffee tables and all the things.
Yeah. So really all we had to do, and she decorated it so cute. Like it was really nice. Just to go there, and we brought our clothes. I brought a suitcase of toys for my kids. And then we got, bedding and towels and dishes. So that's why we did it. And like I said, I fell into it by accident, and it completely changed like overnight. I went from living in Alaska to having a preschool, and I'm a teacher. That's what I went to college for. I'm not a teacher anymore, and I don't want to be, but in addition,
you're teaching, you're just not teaching in you're teaching people minimalism and your story, and there's education in that. You're just not teaching in the traditional sense of a classroom.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That's such a good reframe. That is exactly what I'm doing. Cause I definitely do.
Yes. Let's absolutely. I don't want you to feel stripped of that, because you very much teach. So
yes, I'm not in a school setting anymore. That's
correct.
What it is.
Yes.
But I had 3 kids. I was at home where I was like the 3rd generation to be in Alaska. So there's a lot of stuff, and it was just so normal for me to keep all of the toys, all of the crafts, because I was an early childhood teacher. So that comes with all the crafts.
Lots of glitter. Was there lots of glitter?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Because I was the type that was like, we're here to have fun. And glitter was a part of it.
Oh, meanwhile, my poor kids, this is something for their therapists. They knew I despised the glitter. So they would tell their preschool teachers, we have to leave this at school because my mom does not want the glitter in the house. I'm like,
funny.
And just the type of stuff, you're coming from Alaska. So maybe I'm stereotyping, but I feel like it's cold there, and you're moving to Florida. So I feel like even your wardrobe, aside from your underwear, is completely different from what you were used to. So just changing that is in and of itself.
Yeah. And we had, my husband hunts, he was a hunter. So he had hunting gear, he had fishing gear. We had, four-wheelers, we had snowboarding gear, we had winter gear, we had a thing called Arctic gear because my husband used to work climbing telephone poles in negative 60 degrees. So he had Arctic gear.
That could not sound like any less fun at all.
I know.
I mean,
his eyelashes were like frozen shut. It's miserable. So,
oh my gosh. So what did you do with that stuff? Did you sell it? Did you donate it? Did you give it away? Like, what did you do? What was that process like?
Yes. Okay. So we decided that my husband didn't want to leave us back, Alaska for long. So we're like, okay, I'll get it done in a month. And so I hit the ground running, and for 3 weekends in a row, I had a garage sale.
Mm-hmm.
And the first weekend was very successful. I sold about $1,500 worth of stuff. And I assumed that every other garage sale that I did was going to be that successful. In the last 2 garage sales, I maybe made like $100.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever tried to sell your clutter, you know that there are some things that will sell fast and for still pennies on the dollar. And then the rest of it, people they don't really want it. Like if it's clutter to you, it's often clutter to somebody else. And so I just remember having all this stuff in my driveway and on my lawn, and even still on my side of my house, and just trying to get people to take it for free. Because if I could get them to take it for free, I didn't have to pack it up into my car and drive it away, which saved me time. But people wouldn't even take it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day after work, I was just packing up my car, taking things to the donation center. And because I was in Alaska in a small town, they actually stopped taking donations from me.
They shut you down. That's it. They cut you off. They cut you off on the donations.
Yes. And at the time I was like, I took it personally. I was like, they must just not be accepting donations from me. But now that I've had some time to really understand how donation centers work, it was probably just that they weren't taking donations in general. But I was like, oh my gosh.
They don't even want my stuff. Oh my gosh. Or, we just released an episode that dropped today, the day of our recording, not the day that the show airs, obviously, that one of our guests was telling a story how she had she had to pay to have somebody move her stuff, and so it actually not just cost her time, like yours did, of time of back and forth, but it actually cost money for her to get rid of it because nobody wanted it. She couldn't give it away. And it was so big. It was a couch and she had to pay people to haul it away. And she's like, that's painful because I'm paying to remove something that I don't even want in the first place.
Yeah, it was very painful. Just to watch it happen like that and realize, I remember really clearly looking at all of that stuff and being really bitter that it wasn't selling and thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like I totally could have paid off my student loans, but instead I've got this piles of stuff around me that nobody will even buy. I can't sell. Nobody wants it for free. It was like, that was pretty burned into my mind. But, like I said, I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know that because I was, like I said, I was not on board, like with how we did it. I was internally freaking out, just every night with my husband being like, what are we going to do when we get there? Like, we're not going to have any stuff. Like the kids are going to be mad at me because I'm getting rid of all of their toys. We're not going to, I sound so dramatic, but I really felt like we were going to starve and like be homeless and die or something. Very dramatic.
Oh my gosh. Well, you knew he had a job, right? Like he had a job, yes. So he was getting a paycheck. So I feel like you weren't going to starve, but I feel like you were left to be bad. Listen, I'm not trying to paint your husband as a bad guy, but I feel like you were left to do the heavy lifting. Like you had to be the one like, no, we don't have room to take your favorite, sorry.
Yes.
You can pick one Care Bear, but just not the rest, and
yes,
that's a lot.
He recognizes it now, but he's very, like, I think on the Enneagram, he's probably an 8.
I'm an 8.
Like,
so yeah.
And he's also like, if you do astrology stuff, like he's an Aries. And so I'm
an Aries.
Okay. Yeah. So he's just got like this very like fast start, take action, go do it. And it works well because I'm like, okay, you do that. I can do the other pieces of it. But we do talk about it now. And he's like, that was crazy. Like you probably should have said like, slow down. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
know, I first of all, I know you well enough to not say that. And I also trust you. And that's the lesson I think that came out of it was that, yeah, the lesson that came out of it was that we got there and he would tell me every single day when I'd be like, I'm so pissed off at you because I'm doing all of this.
Yeah.
That he's like, just get here. Like I have the house, I have the job. I got the kids the beds. We've got their bedding. We've got them fun towels and dishes. Like there's beaches here. Like just get here and you'll see that's fine. And that was one of the biggest lessons was like finding security in our resourcefulness and realizing that security doesn't come from stuff. It comes from being able to trust that I'll be able to figure it out. There's really like nothing bad actually happened from that. Like I thought it would. Actually, a lot of really great things did happen. So, yeah, in the moment it was not fun. And I was so angry and just like annoyed and
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
I will say for any of my Enneagram listeners, that is very 8 behavior because 8s notoriously are quick decision makers, don't bring emotion into the decision-making process. They're very much leading with doing and then they think. So it's like logic and action. So the emotion is like the last thing on the chopping block. And the mindset, at least I can say for my mindset, but I think this is true for a lot of 8s is if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. Like where a lot of other types on the Enneagram will make sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed before taking the plunge. 8s will be like, we have a rough, we have a rough sketch. Let's just go. And then we'll fix it as we tweak it as we go. How bad can it be? And so, but which, that's great on one hand, but you have to be aware of your surroundings because we tend to leave other people in the dust. And thankfully you have a gracious heart and,
well, I can keep up too.
trusting
So I'm
people.
always like curious about what our dynamic is because
What did you say what is your Enneagram type?
I go back and forth. Like
Okay.
sometimes I think I'm a 3 and sometimes I think I'm a 7. So
interesting.
But also maybe, I don't know. I went through, here's where I get hung up because I think I was trained to be like a nurturer and I am good at that, but it's not necessarily like what motivates me, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really just want to, I think this is a 6th thing. I really just want to have a whole lot of fun with my family and like enjoy my life. And I also want it to be secure. So I don't want to have like reckless fun. Does that make sense?
But the fun part is very 7-ish. The security part is 6. So maybe a 7 with a 6 wing. Mm-hmm. 3s can kind of keep up with the 8s. The 3s and the 8s are like kind of, 3s are quick processors. We can unpack it. We can unpack it at a later date. I don't want to have to digress from our people that came for minimalism, but this is, obviously this is my geeky wheelhouse. So, but in any event, so you got there. And at that point, leading up into that point, you were just living your air quote normal life with stuff and not that like simplicity minimalism. I mean, you were still a working mom, obviously working a lot of hours at a preschool, which is exhausting. And you had 3 little kids at the time. So was simplicity something that was a theme in your life at that point, or wasn't it till you got to Florida?
It was definitely not a theme in my life. I was doing the most in every area. I felt like I had to be the best kind of teacher. I had to be the best kind of mom. I had to have the best kind of stuff. However, I was also a very young mom. And so it was like the best kind of stuff on a budget. And I don't know. It was not simple at all. It felt like no matter how much I did, I still would go to bed at the end of the day with a to-do list a mile long. And then I would wake up in the morning with yesterday's to-do list with that day stacked on top of it.
So, and I'm sure everyone, or now hopefully not everyone listening, but like, I feel like so many people are like, oh my gosh, that's the story of my life. Like, I can't get off this hamster wheel. So you moved to Florida. You obviously, right now, your primary job was specifically getting the kids in your family life situated. So you didn't have the business over your head. You didn't have a lot of physical stuff. I mean, you had, minimal toys and minimal clothes just from circumstances. How did the whole simplicity element start to play in?
So it was very immediate. It was
Okay.
so immediate, the difference. I had to get a job, actually 2 jobs to like make our ends meet. And I actually got 2 teaching jobs. So I would teach from like 6 or 7 to 1 p.m. Then we'd go to the next school from like 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then we would come home. And the craziest thing was that on paper, like moving across the country, away from our family, away from our friends, working 2 jobs instead of just 1 for less money while my husband starts a business, like I should have been way more stressed out, but I wasn't, because I would get home after work and my house supported me. That's what I can see in hindsight, was that my house supported me. I could make us dinner without having to worry about doing the dishes from that morning or the night before, and then making dinner and then doing the dishes again. I didn't come home and have piles of laundry waiting for me. My kids were able to know where their stuff went and help clean up, and they did it simply. And that was the biggest thing for me, was my house supported me. And I used to joke in Alaska that being at work was the easy part of my day and going home was the hard part.
I think a lot of people feel that. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
people say that, like that, when I come home, that's when the real work kicks in.
Mm-hmm. And so immediately, like, the kids would go to bed and my husband and I, we watched the entire series of Friends, and we would work out every night because we're both into fitness. We would work out, we would watch an episode or 2 of Friends. And then on the weekends, we would just wake up and decide where we wanted to go and then come home. And it was just so easy. And I remember, like, after being there for a month, wondering to myself, like, when is it going to get hard again? Like, when are we going to stop being able to go places on the weekend? When am I going to have to start spending my weekends catching up again like I used to? And it for the most part has not happened since then. That was 2013. Now, I will say, with a caveat, that I've also had 2 more babies in between.
I was like, and then you decided, hey, we have this simple life. We've got it down. Now we got a good rhythm going. Let's just add 2 more humans into the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. We took 4 years or 6 years off, I guess, total in between having the next kids. But we did live that way for about 4 years. And it just became our normal to have a house that was so easy to be in like that. And we reaccumulated more stuff. I do also want to say that, like, I don't believe that you should only have a suitcase of stuff. That was not fun.
Yeah. And that actually brings me to a good point that I want you to, because you talk about this a lot in the work that you do, is the distinction between simplicity and minimalism. Because I think we all have these images that we conjure up when we hear certain words. And, I've always said, I'm not a minimalist. That's not my lane. That's not kind of what I do, but I've always been about living simply, whether it's with your stuff, with your time, with your space, whatever that looks like. So how do you define it and make that distinction?
Yeah. So I think people's idea of minimalism would probably be like what we did when we left and had 1 suitcase of stuff. Like, that's extreme. And I don't recommend that. That to me is like extreme, rigid, like doesn't allow for flexibility, doesn't allow for you to actually have the things that you want that can actually have a purpose in your life. And even that purpose might just be to make you happy or give you some pleasure and have some fun. And so simplicity to me is just being able to find the balance of having enough stuff to meet your needs and your desires without it being overwhelming. And so I'm like even in my everyday life, like I'm always trying to find that balance. And I will say that in like the long-term picture, the more kids I have, the less stuff I can manage. And that became pretty clear after we had my now 2-year-old, because she was born just before the pandemic and everybody was home from school and everybody was like home all of the time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah,
What was that like? Just give us a
it was a
give us a
lot.
oh my gosh. Because you seem like you have a very chill demeanor, like a very
Yeah.
calming, you don't get rattled easily. I mean, I don't really know you well, but that's just the vibe I get. And
Yeah.
I can
That's true.
Is it okay?
It is true until I get like overstimulated or like overwhelmed. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, my in-laws wanting to help us out. And so they sent us, the kids, a whole bunch of toys like from Amazon. One of them was a ball pit with 600 balls.
Oh
And that
no.
was the worst week of my life.
Oh good God. Oh my
Um,
goodness gracious.
yeah. And I mean, they sent some other stuff that was cool, like a tent, but like the ball pit with 600 balls was so clear to me of like, I have 5 kids. That means 5 of these people and my husband are throwing balls all around my house 24/7 and it's driving me crazy. And so, I mean, some people are okay with ball pits, but I don't want a ball pit. Like that to me doesn't make my life simpler or
No,
more enjoyable.
I know what those ball pits are like. And oh my gosh, that's great. And is your
Yeah.
family all still in Alaska?
Some of them are, and some of them have kind of scattered throughout the US.
Okay.
So yeah.
I was just
We
wondering
set
from
the
from a
pace.
support perspective, because again, when we talk about like organization, just in general, a lot of it just comes from being able to delegate things to people. And you probably had a support system. I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but that when you were back in Alaska, you had a support system, whether it was siblings, parents, in-laws, what have you, that you could rely on to help out with certain things. And here you are moving to Florida, literally across the country. You lose that network. I mean, I'm sure you've built a network since, but just that now all of a sudden you don't have that. And that's a whole other dynamic aside from the physical change, just having that safety net of people, that arsenal in your back pocket was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a very big deal. And I can kind of share different experiences with that too. So we lived in the house next door to my in-laws for about a year. And it was so nice because we could, every Sunday we would send our kids over there and my husband and I would go play on our like co-ed soccer league. And having that kind of support was really great. And having that kind of support after you have a baby is also great, of like, just have the big kids go play with the grandparents while I stay with the baby. And I didn't have that with our last 2 kids because we had just moved and then we had the pandemic and all of the things. But I had enough experience. And by that point, well, actually I started my business after I had my 4-year-old who's in the background.
Yes, if anybody's watching on YouTube, you'll see a little head peek up, a cute little blonde head peek up.
Yes. She's actually the reason I started my business. But
yeah, and I definitely want to hear about that journey too. So this is probably a good place for you to maybe even kind of weave that in of what made you decide or to start your blog, podcast, and the whole Motherhood Simplified brand.
Yes. So I got pregnant with her in 2017 and joined a due date group on Facebook, which is just a private group of people who are all due like in the same month as you. And so we had our babies and everyone was very overwhelmed. And they were like, how about we do a thing? And they were overwhelmed by things like what they were talking about was like the laundry piles, the messes from the other kids, like dishes, meals. And they started this thing called house tours. And they're like, let's show each other the insides of our houses so that we can see that we're not the only ones who are struggling with this. And when it got to be my turn and I was like showing them my house, they were like, we all agreed that you would just show us your houses. It's like, did you like take a whole bunch of time to prepare? Because where's the laundry piles on your couches? Where's like, how do your kids clean up after themselves? And it was that moment where I was like, oh, like I did not have this experience with my first three kids. Like my first three kids, that's what I was dealing with, like breastfeeding a baby on top of a pile of clothes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so I was like, I think that it changed for me when we moved to Florida, and we've reaccumulated stuff because that's what they noticed. They were like, your kids have toys and they're happy and they're playing, but it doesn't look like you're overwhelmed. And I wasn't. And so I just asked them, like, do you want me to show you how to get rid of your stuff? And how I do my kids' wardrobes. That was a really big one that people were like, yes, show us how you do clothes.
Oh, we'll have to definitely talk about that. We'll talk about that in a minute, because I'm sure that's something that people are definitely like, yes, because clothes, especially with growing sizes, that's always a constant. So you were like, oh, I think I'm onto something.
Yes. I'm like, I think I accidentally stumbled into a way of life that makes it way easier. Cause even with being in the postpartum phase, I remember like she was like 3 months old and I was still like able to nap when she napped and focus on just breastfeeding her when she was hungry. And it got harder when we had the second one and we had 2 under 2 again. But yeah, it was a completely different experience. And I didn't have the support system like I did when I had my first 3 in Alaska, but it still felt easier. And I think it goes back to, again, having my house set up in a way that supports me instead of just causes me a lot more work.
So what were some of the specific, or can you pinpoint some of the specific, like intentional, either systems or strategies that allowed your house to support you? Because obviously stuff is a big one, right? Like not having less, you have less to manage, less toys to put away, less clothes to fold, all the things. But what were some of the other noticeable changes in the way that you structured your home that made it easier for you?
So I have 3 specific areas, but the kitchen was a big one. The kitchen, because the cycle that I used to be in when I lived in Alaska was always having a sink full of dishes and still having enough in the cabinet that it didn't matter. So there could be a sink full of dirty dishes and we still had enough that we could pull more out and add to it without actually having to do the dishes. And so I was always behind on dishes, and it's very embarrassing to admit, but there were some times where it would be like I left dishes on the stove or, in Tupperware in the fridge, and it was easier for me to just throw it away than to clean it. Like that's how just overwhelmed I was. And that's how much excess stuff we had inside of our kitchen, not including things like gadgets. There's something for everything in the kitchen. Like you can literally get a Tupperware container that's shaped like an onion to put your onions in. Like you can just have normal Tupperware.
Yes.
These
are all true.
One of the biggest ones. Yeah. That was one of the biggest ones. It saved me time and it saved me money, because the cycle that I also used to be in was I would make dinner the night before, would be too tired to do the dishes, would wake up and go to the work the next morning, and would come home to the dishes in the sink.
Oh no. Oh, Krista.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no. So you'd come, so would they be like sitting there for like 24 hours with like caked on food?
Yes. And then that's not a way that you want to do the dishes, right? Like, or that's not the way that you want to make dinner. And so I would have to choose, like, do I want to spend the 20 minutes doing the dishes and then spend 40 minutes making dinner and then another 20 minutes doing dishes again? So then I would just like order pizza and not deal with it. So having less in the kitchen, so that I'm not going to say that I do like 1 dish per person, because that's extreme. But
that goes back to that whole minimalism. Like, okay, if we don't wash this 1 fork, we don't have a fork kind of thing. We're not talking about that.
Yeah. So I have enough dishes to like get us through the day as a family of 7, and then a couple extras, if somebody drops something or the dog licks the plate or whatever, then I don't even have the option to fall behind. It just doesn't exist. So that changed a lot for me. I did the same thing, the same concept with clothing. It used to be that we just had like walk into our closets or open my kids' dressers full of clothes, yet still somehow nothing to wear, because we don't like it. They don't like how it fits, or it's the wrong size, or
But
whatever.
somehow it stays in the drawer as opposed to going, well, let's get rid of it. It stays in. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's another thing that changed for me. I always say this sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not. I'm telling this to get you excited because it can be possible for you too. But I haven't been behind on laundry since we moved to Florida. Like I just haven't been behind. Like I can catch up in a day if I do fall behind.
And you're a mom of 5 and you are a mom of 5. That's a lot of laundry.
Yeah. Well, the older 3 do their own laundry now, but even when they weren't doing their own laundry, it wasn't possible for me to fall behind, and we still had enough to meet our needs, which was a game changer for me. It makes it so that the task of doing laundry isn't overwhelming, right? Which is what the cycle that I used to be in. I'll just like wash it for 2 or 3 cycles, dry it for like 2 or 3 cycles, and then let it sit in a basket and have like 5 or 6 loads of laundry to put away. And again, like the dishes, like it didn't matter because we still had,
you had excess. That's it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So reducing the amount of laundry that we had was also a game changer. And then again, with the toys, which was hard for me as a teacher to do. But what I found was that my kids cared about their stuff more. They took care of it better. They played better. They played more cooperatively. They played more creatively. They played more independently. They were so much, I think I said it already, but I'll say it again, more responsible and willing to help clean up. I think kids naturally, they want to help. They want to contribute. They want to please. And if, I can look back on the way that our house was before with too many toys, like they were set up to fail, to be honest. Like they couldn't, it was overwhelming for me. It was overwhelming to them. They couldn't keep up on it. So yeah.
Did you involve your kids, or what age, I should say, did you, because I'm always curious, what age you got them involved in this process? When you, in the actual, like, obviously they were thrust in to the fire with the move for the bigs, right? Like, cause that was just a circumstance, but in your life now, in your habit routine, like what is that, especially with the thinning of the toys? How involved are they?
They are heavily involved now based on their ages and stages. So I in hindsight, the way that I got rid of all of their stuff, that when we moved Alaska to Florida, I only brought 1 suitcase of toys, was probably pretty traumatizing for them, but they're okay now.
It's good to know.
Yeah, they're fine now. I don't recommend doing that, but it is what it is. I did let them know, like, these are the toys that we're going to keep in the suitcase. And I curated it. I was like, I want to keep these dollhouses, things that I know that they can play with open-endedly for a long time. So I chose what we were bringing to Florida. And then we lived in Florida for 4 years, and we reaccumulated stuff, especially toys, but it was much slower than I used to. And so we really didn't have to like deal with getting a whole lot of toys and then decluttering stuff. And it was just a very slow accumulation. Basically, what we got into the habit of, because when we moved to Florida and my husband was an entrepreneur, we were really broke, was really splurging on like birthdays and Christmas, holiday type things. And in between that, we didn't really get them a whole lot because I didn't feel the need to. I saw them playing with their 1 suitcase of toys and being totally content. And I just didn't feel like I needed to do that. And so again, I kind of accidentally stumbled into splurging on birthdays, paying attention to what I know they would really love to play with or have. And then 4 years in Florida, we decided to move to Idaho. We've moved a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. They were older at that point, and I didn't have the younger 2 yet. And I included them a lot in that because I was like, they're older now. I can't just get rid of their stuff and make the decisions for them. And so we gave them a boundary of like, you guys have these 2 large Rubbermaid bins. Put your favorite toys in here. We're going to keep what fits. We'll pack it in together so we can smash it all in as tightly as possible. And actually they were totally fine with that because they got to focus on keeping their favorites. This is one thing that I teach moms now is don't ask them to just get rid of things or throw things in a bag and take it away, because it feels like a loss, because it is. So focus on what they get to keep and focus on keeping their favorites and give them a boundary. Yeah. Give them that physical boundary. Obviously it doesn't have to be like a suitcase, but give them a boundary of like whatever fits into your closet space or your toy shelf. That's what we're going to keep. And they can kind of see it a little bit more practically of like, oh, it doesn't fit. Like we don't have room for it. We can't keep it.
Yeah, I like that too. And I subscribe to a very similar philosophy, and I practice that. My kids are grown. I have an 18 and a 21-year-old now. So, way past that. But with my younger ones, they were big stuffed animal I have two girls, and they weren't as much into like dolls, but they love stuffed animals. And, stuffed animals, they're big and fluffy and they take up space. And, before you know it, it can take over a room. And so I would say, okay, here's your basket that you have in your bedroom. You can choose, you have the power. So it's empowering them to fit whatever you can into this basket. So you have to decide. And I feel like those critical thinking skills, even at a young age, are things that serve them well as they get older, because again, I didn't tell them you can only keep 5, but they had to really play around with, okay, if I want this big, ginormous one, that's going to take up all the real estate, or I can have 10 little ones. And those, I think giving them that decision-making power, at the end of the day, I still was having them contained in this basket. And that's really what I cared about, but it was empowering them to make those choices. And I think that that's really important. And it's not that different from what you did with the bins, and saying, here you go. What do you want to take with us? So I love that.
And we still do that. It works really well. And I will say that the blonde one behind me, she is the one that will teach me a lot about this, because one of the questions I get a lot is like, what about a kid who literally doesn't want to get rid of anything? And that is her. Like, I will sweep up the floor and she will find a string in it and go pull it out of the trash can. And I'm like, what is happening? So
I just had this conversation on somebody else's show, and I was talking about my daughter, who allows me to talk about her on the show. So I'm going to, when she's my 18-year-old, and when she was younger, she thought everything had feelings and would pick up strings, like yarn, like off the playground. And she'd be like, I need to keep him. He needs a friend. And like, we keep these little things. And it taught me so much in terms of patience and working with different types of personalities. And yeah, like where I'm like, what are you talking about? But it's true. So even as somebody who's teaches this for a living, doesn't mean that everybody is always going to have the same buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, my first 3 kids were not like that. She is making up for all of them.
Oh my gosh. We need to just take a quick break, but we come back. I want to hear about the move to Idaho and then how this has continued to grow. So sit tight. We'll be right back. And then here you are again, kind of restarting again. Did that amp up your simplicity? Like, again, because you're starting over, like, did that say, okay, we're going to even thin out even more and take it to another level?
Yes. So when we went from Florida to Idaho, we again just crunched numbers and we're like, well, doesn't really make sense to bring everything. And then we had to figure out housing, and we had big goals that we want to do for our housing. And so we decided to go in an RV and live in the RV for a few months, because HGTV makes it look so endearing, and it's not.
Oh my gosh. So with 3, and how old were the kids at this point?
They were 4, 6, and 9.
Oh my gosh.
Or no.
Oh my God.
Something they're around those ages.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That is insane. Oh my gosh. So how long did this RV experiment take?
Like 5 months. So our plan was to do it for a year. And I got pregnant like the week that we got to Idaho while we were living in our RV. And we tried to give it a fair shot, because I think that was a good idea to like just try it and see what happened. And it didn't work for us. It really sucked. Nothing against the people who love it. I just didn't. And
that's a lot of togetherness. That's a lot.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. I really like to have space, and my kids like it too, especially the older they get, to like just go be alone for a second. It just
Mhm.
didn't, it couldn't, it wasn't a thing. And so then I was pregnant, we got a house, and I was a part of the due date group. And I remember watching everybody talking about like everything that they're going to get, like all the gadgets, like what's everybody getting? What are we doing? Like, what are you going to get? Like, what do we need? What do we not need? And I just told everybody throughout the entire pregnancy, like, I'm not getting anything really. Like, I'm going to have a car seat. I'm going to have some clothes. I'm going to have a really good backpack because I know I have other kids. I'm going to be walking around.
Yeah,
with.
absolutely.
Yeah. But I was like, as far as like, I'm over all of the baby gadgets. I'm over the wipes warmers. I'm over the something for everything. Like, I just don't want it. And I didn't know that I was over it because I had become so used to like living simply without having all that stuff, being surrounded by that stuff. But I had also, because we had lived that way for so long, I just had a really good internal compass, I guess, on what kinds of things would be worth getting and what kinds of things would not be worth getting. So we had a Saint Bernard. I had 3 older kids. And so having like a
Wait, was the Saint Bernard in the RV?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I need to see pictures of this. Okay.
I don't have many pictures because it was so traumatizing.
I was going to say, I need to see pictures. I feel like, oh my gosh, that is.
It was not fun.
Was this your husband's idea? Was this the 8? Are we blaming this on the 8? Okay.
You can 100% blame him.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
I was like, he was like, yeah, let's do this. I can see the plan of this would be a good idea. This will work. And of course I was like, that sounds fun. Like, I'll figure out how to make it happen. And it was not fun for any of us.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is great storytelling. That's for sure.
It is fun.
Do the kids have recollections like from that time?
Gosh. Like, yeah, they do a little bit. So my son was in kindergarten when this happened, and they had a project at school where they had to draw a picture of their house. And at that point, his bedroom was just this tiny little RV bunk bed. And so he drew a picture of a rectangle and him like just laying like this and then some wheels, and everyone has like,
do you live in your car?
Yeah. The teacher, she was so nice. And she was like, I was just wondering, like, he drew wheels on your house. I was like, we're living in an RV right now. Like, I promise, like, it's not, and we're working on not living in an RV right now. So,
yeah. we're on an adventure. We're on an adventure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was an adventure. It was an experience that I don't ever want to do again. Okay.
So you were like, I can't make it a year. There's no way we were not making it a year. And so did you move into like an actual house?
Yes.
Yes. And had the baby.
Yes. We moved into an actual house. When we went from Florida to Idaho, we only brought what fit into our RV.
Okay.
And my husband worked for Aflac at the time, the duck.
Yeah.
And one of the things that made the cut in our RV was this like 4-foot tall stuffed duck. So then we got to our house and had to refurnish it. And I remember looking around, I'm like, why did we bring this duck? Like, why was that the thing that we brought? So I think I just unintentionally and organically learned these lessons of like things we need, things we don't need.
Yeah.
Things that might be nice. And yeah, I did that with baby gear. It was amazing. I'm like, I need a place to put the baby so that she doesn't get stepped on by the dog. Right.
Sure.
And it was really simple. And then, yeah, it goes back to where we started
and then when you probably saw it and you're like, I have a happy, thriving baby and she doesn't need a million things. And this isn't to shame people who like have their first baby or their second baby or whatever, and you have like a big shower. I'm not saying you shouldn't do these things, but you're saying those things don't dictate that health and happiness of your child. And you as a mother were able to probably spend quality time with all of your kids and have some sense of sanity because you had less to maintain. Is that fair?
That's exactly it. And that was one of the biggest things that when we started the house tours and just, opening up and going through the postpartum phase together, they were like, I feel like my big kids get no attention. I feel like I'm cleaning up all the time. I feel like I can't catch a break no matter how much work I do. And if they had a spouse feeling angry and resentful at their spouse, even if their spouses were helping, because there's so much work to do inside of the house that you need 3 or 4 people just to do it. And yeah, that was one of the biggest things that I started sharing with people was like, I've got 3 kids and a baby and I haven't bought any baby toys. And she's so happy because all she wants to do is play with my sock. And it's like, not that I'm like saying, go buy your kid a pack of socks, but those are the things that babies enjoy. They enjoy having space, which is one of the things that I realized is a big value of mine and why I don't like living in an RV is because I do value space. I value space to, like move. And we have long winters here now. So giving them space to jump around and dance and without.
But you didn't stay in Idaho, did you?
Nope. We went to Southern California and then now we're in Ohio.
Oh my goodness. So when did baby number 5 arrive?
She arrived when we were in California.
Okay. So she's been through a move.
Yes. So when we were in Idaho, we decided just financially and our housing, it made sense to bring our stuff with us. And so we actually got a moving truck, the largest moving truck we could have. And so we did have also the experience of moving with stuff, right? Instead of just being like, forget it. Well, I'll just start over when we get there. And then we did that from California to Ohio. And that's also been really eye-opening too, of just like wanting, eventually, I think my husband and I both got to a place where we wanted to have our own stuff. We want to have our own space. We don't want to keep moving all the time. Well, actually we do, but our kids don't want to keep moving all the time.
So this is not your final destination. This is not your forever home. You've got more. Yeah.
We say it's our forever for now home because now that our big kids, they were starting middle school, starting high school, like we just didn't want to move them during those years. So we're like, get them through. And then we've got the younger ones.
Right. So you have a window of time after the bigger ones get through, then you can go on. I mean, it gives you an opportunity to because I think sometimes people like to have either a goal to work towards or that catalyst to help them say, this is going to jumpstart me to, even though theoretically we could all start at any point, right? You can start today. There's never a wrong time to start. But I think sometimes knowing I have a move coming up, so I'm going to declutter. I have this coming up, I'm going to purge or whatever. It's Christmas, we're going to go through the old toys, whatever that is. It gives people that anchor to making that change. So for people that are out there that maybe aren't going to do something extreme like move, how do you, obviously you have your strategies, but what advice do you have for people that are just, the women that you coach and the people that you talk to on where to begin, how to even, make this mindset shift? Because that's really what it is.
Yeah. So one exercise, it sounds kind of funny, but it works. One exercise that I like to do with moms is pretend like you set up some cameras in your house and you just let it record for 24 hours and you watch what goes on in your house. Watch it as if you're watching a stranger and then ask yourself, is what that person's doing realistic and sustainable? Is it realistic for you or that person that you're pretending isn't you to keep up with that many dishes, to keep up with that many toys? Is it realistic to expect that your kids can know how to put the toys away when it's all just thrown around? Do they even have, is that something that is even possible? Is it possible for one person to be doing the amount of work that you're trying to do? And that kind of, I'm not going to say it lets you off the hook and that you don't have any work to do, but it lets you off the hook in feeling like something's wrong with you. And you can put that negative feeling onto the stuff in your house. Your stuff is the problem. That's the thing that's causing you all of the work. It's not that you aren't organized enough. It's not that you don't have a brain that's capable of completing a chore chart or whatever. Like
Right.
you have too much
Right.
stuff. So let yourself off the hook that way. And then use that as your motivation to just start getting rid of things. Because I think we do overthink it. That's one thing that I can learn a lot from my husband is like not overthinking it. Just get rid of one thing, like literally just one thing, and let that momentum build. Or choose a space in your home that is, like simple, like there's no emotional attachment to it, like under your kitchen sink or spice cabinet where you're
I
like,
always say
there's a
start in the
lot.
bathroom. If you don't know where to start,
Yeah.
start in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Throw out
Yeah.
expired medicine, that Tylenol that expired 4 years ago, or that cough medicine or whatever it is.
Yeah. And even like those lotions that you never use, right?
Yes.
If you haven't used it by now, you're not going to.
Yeah. No,
Just let it go.
absolutely. What about the role of, I'm curious, the role of like time? Because I think, again, a lot of people, especially moms, are exhausted and overworked because they're running. And I know the pandemic shifted because you were just managing stuff inside the house, and maybe your extracurricular activities were paused, but I feel like we're kind of back for a lot of people and running to sports, arts, dance, fill in the blank of all the different things. And our calendars can get just as overflowing as our closets. Do you talk about that time simplicity piece of your calendar in addition to the physical stuff that's weighing us down?
Yeah, I do. And what I've found is that for the majority of people, if they can declutter at least some, not your entire house, if they can at least declutter some of their house, like maybe just the dishes, maybe just some toys, it frees up more time for them. And also like mental, like running to-do lists that just never stop in your mind. It frees up that mental energy so that you could more easily, what I call them, like do more high level strategy, right? Like creating a calendar for yourself, or start, implementing a new routine, or start meal planning, or start actually creating and sticking to a budget, which all of those things were things that I wanted to do and tried to do and felt like no matter what I did, I just couldn't figure it out. And a lot of it was because I was just so bogged down by you can't create that kind of structure when you have so much. Something has to give, and the easiest thing to give is the stuff in your house. And I do also talk about, other strategies like delegation, right? Whether it's delegating to people inside of your house or outsourcing, right? Outsourcing laundry, outsourcing meal planning, getting a babysitter, just asking for help, which so many of us just, well, maybe this is me, like they just don't do it, or they, they don't feel like they can. So we don't ask for help.
Right. Well, I see that all the time with organizing, and, this is something I should be able to do myself. I should be able to get rid of stuff, but a lot of times, even if you can do something, is that the best use of your time? For certain things, we have somebody that cuts our lawn. It's not because we can't do it, but it's our time. We're obviously financially in a position that we can outsource that. So I'm supporting somebody else, and it frees up our time to be doing something else that really matters, or that we really want to be doing. So I think, again, delegating is huge, and I think a lot of people do feel like when it comes to stuff with their house or even a babysitter, well, that's my job. I should be able to, because I used to think like that when my girls were little, like if I wanted to go and work out, like I just wouldn't do it if I couldn't take, you know what I mean? Or whatever it was. Oh, I can't do this because I don't have a babysitter or I don't have help. And it just becomes part of the problem.
Yeah. And in the last year, I think having our fifth baby, I've said it, and I've also heard so many people say it all the time. It's like, I wish we had like villages, right? I wish we had like communities for mom. Yet also in the same breath, we're saying that we're unwilling to let anybody do anything for us or let anybody come in and help us. And so that to me, I was like, why am I saying this? Like, why am I like, I wish that we had a village to help me raise my kids. And then also being like, I'm the only one that's adequate enough to, take care of my kids or clean my house or do anything. It all has to be me. Like, if we want that, we have to be willing to give, something in order to be able to have that.
Relinquish that control and relinquish.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, and as women entrepreneurs as well, I think that you can look at it in your business. I have a team that supports me to help me do the things that I want to do, because it's impossible to do everything all at once. We have to ask for help. And I always say, CEOs of companies are successful because they have people in different facets that are their wheelhouses. And whether your team is internal, like your kids and your spouse, or your team consists of outside contractors to help you with, different things, or friends, that's all part of the process of being able to keep things moving and allow you to have that space and freedom that I think we all crave.
Yes, exactly. I think we all do too.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So you've given us so many great strategies and tips and ideas. And seriously, you're like totally an inspiration. The fact that you have 5 kids and have moved literally all over the country and lived in an RV with a St. Bernard, I just have no words. Where can people, before we go to our last break and then come back and put you in the hot seat, where can people go to learn more about you, follow you, and get involved in your Motherhood Simplified community?
Yeah. So if you go to motherhoodsimplified.com, you can find the blog, you can find the podcast, you can find the courses, there's a little search button. So you can search your topic. You can look at all of the testimonials, and I've got podcast episodes from moms like you who have decluttered, and all of their stories are so unique and just really valuable. What else is there? I think that's pretty much it, but you can get into the Facebook group or on Instagram if you like.
Yeah. And we'll link up to everything to everything in our show notes. And so trust me, you will absolutely be able to find and follow and connect up with Krista. So we're going to take one more quick break and then just come back and put you in the hot seat for our wrap-up questions. So sit tight. All right, Krista. So with all of your spare time as a mom with 5 kids and running a business, reading is something that's really, I think, books, whether it's audiobooks or, written books, people love to have resources for inspiration of where they can go. So tell our listeners, what's been a book that you've kind of either gone to that's been either transformational in your life, or something that you recommend to people on an ongoing basis? Like what's that book for you?
I'll show you. I'm undecided on how I feel about it right now, but it's called the Bitcoin Standard.
Oh, okay.
It is not about investing. It's
Okay.
about our financial system history. And it's been really eye-opening in how I choose to relate to money. So,
that's fascinating.
Yes.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
I'm not saying go buy Bitcoin. I'm just saying it's an interesting book.
It's an interesting book. Yeah. And I think, again, financial clutter and financial responsibility plays into the whole clutter and organization world. So I think that's fascinating. So I'll definitely link up to that. And then our last 2 questions, which we ask every guest. In this particular season of your life, while you seem very relaxed and calm and have it all together, where do you feel like you are the most thriving and organized? And where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess?
Okay. So most organized for sure, my physical house. Like I feel like I've got that mastered. That's on autopilot for me. That's very easy. I'll be completely honest and say that the part that I'm struggling with right now is coming out of the season of having 2 under 2 and doing damage control on relationships with my older kids because it's so physically demanding, and with my husband. So, and friendships, even like all of my relationships. I think having small children I've just been reminded of how demanding it is and how much it takes from your ability to connect and relate to people.
I appreciate you saying that, because it is real, and as we go through different seasons of our lives, and my girls are 2.5 years apart and now they're grown, but I have several friends who have multiple kids, have kids spaced out, and have bigs and littles like that, where there's, you're completely different things. Like my one very good friend had a kid go into kindergarten, go into high school, and go into college in the same year. Like literally she was like, I'm in completely different stages of my life and friendships. And, this is like crazy town, and it takes a lot. Like it's hard enough to parent when you're kind of in the same group, but then when you have people that have different needs and you're kind of pulled in different directions, that's a lot. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's different. I didn't expect it, but you have like the big kids who are wanting to talk about like dating, and then you're interrupted by a toddler flooding the toilet. And
I was going to say, who's going pee-pee on the potty?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'm so sorry I have to cut you off, but literally there's a flood. So just things like that, where it's not their fault, but it's just a lot to juggle.
Yeah, I got you. Well, we thankfully there's grace and forgiveness, and, they're going to look back on all these times and go, wow, my mom had 5 kids and pulled it all together. So
sometimes. Yeah.
Well, Krista, thank you so much again. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for being here. Make sure to click the subscribe or follow button wherever you are watching or listening to our show. Make sure you check out our show notes so that you can connect up with Krista. We're all over social media. And until next week, I'm Laurie Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love by sharing it with your friends. And if this is your first time tuning in, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so that you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth a listen. Head on over to YouTube and make sure that you follow us there as well. We record interviews, videos, and conversations with all of our guests. And again, if you want to learn more about our product offerings, feel free to visit us at simplybeorganized.com, where you can connect with me.